Hello again. Here we are, live. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to let people start to show up and get yourself all settled in with your cup of tea. And we will begin shortly. Hope you can all hear me. I think you can. Okay. Hello, hello. Yes, I forgot again how to make this thing go live. It's not how you think. What can I say? So here we go. Good, you can hear me. That's great. Because I sound pretty loud to myself. So I wish the camera was better. I used to use an attached camera to it, and then it was working fine for many launches. And then one day, YouTube just says, oh, I don't recognize that. I can't use it. So we have this bad kind of flipping around kind of visual. But we'll make it work. We'll make it work. But by the way, I'm wearing my t-shirt. That's thanks to my publisher, Severin House. They kind of came up with this little bowler as the logo for the series. So that's kind of cool. And I don't know if you could see this, but these have little bowlers on them too. Because we hope to bowl you over with the series. So, and today, we're talking about this guy. First in a series. So, as you guys all start to get in here into this, into our chat, let me first introduce to you the giveaways. So today, probably the one that everybody wants the most is this guy. This is the Deerstalker and pipe. Now the pipe is plastic. There is a hole in it, but don't smoke anything in this because it'll melt. You might be able to do bubbles. I don't know. You can try it. I think it'd be nice to, as a little tiny planter, put a little air fern in there. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. And then we're giving away the mug. It's this way on both sides. The mug. And the book bag. Book bag. It's a little gusseted on the bottom, so you can carry lots of stuff in there. And this can go over your shoulder. So you can be traveling with books or your groceries, whatever. And then there is the Sherlock duck. It's a big one. And the reason I only have two, there's only one today and one at another book launch, is because you know how I always give little rubber duckies away? They don't have any Sherlock ducks. What? What you say? I said that too. What the heck? So we've got these guys. But we also have for you, instead of duckies, we have little umbrella pens. Cool, eh? Little umbrella pen. So those are the giveaways. And when I tell you we're giving them away, you go to jerrywesterson@gmail.com and you tell me in the subject line that you would like to win one of those things. And when I bring it up, okay? Because I'm not doing it during the YouTube launch because that would be watching me writing out things on a ticket for 5 minutes each. So don't do that. We won't be doing that. But instead, I will be writing, when it's all done, I will be writing tickets and putting them in the slipper. is the Persian slipper, and I will pluck them out, and you will win. So be aware that it's all happening. I'll tell you when to go to the email, but there will be a time when you have to go to the email and tell me that you want to win something. Okay? We got that all down. We must have this all down by now, but I hope there's new people showing up. I see all kinds of folks coming in. A lot of familiar, well, not faces, names. So, yeah, I hope some new folks are just hiding in the background, that they thought this would be a fun thing to visit. It is not telling me how many people. I'm not seeing it. It will tell me afterward. Great. Okay. Get a little tea. I have it iced today. A little warm outside. Okay, so here we are at the first book launch for the Isolated Seance. We have several more to go, but this was one. I thought this would be a good time to do one because this is before, allegedly, the book launches. We all know that Amazon is sending them out ahead of time. So, but that's okay. That's all right. So, now that we see what I'm giving away, let's talk about the development of this series. Now, as you may know, or you should, I wrote this series, The Enchanter Chronicles. This is the first in it. This is a gas lamp steampunk fantasy series set in the neo-Victorian London. And I did all the research like you do anyway, because even in fantasy, you have to have a foundation in reality. So it's a fairly real London in the 1890s, except it has dirigibles and demons and all kinds of things going on instead. But the foundation was there. So, excuse me, I did a lot of research, as I do, into the Victorian period, which I had really not delved deeply before. And I really liked researching that. And after the series was done, I thought, I'd like to do more. Because I like writing historically. I'd like to do a mystery set in Victorian London. And what better thing to go for than a Sherlockian pastiche set in the time period and with Holmes within it. And so how can I do that? No, I just started to research the time period, keep reading a lot of Holmes books and stories, and get down some of the basic things that happen in those stories, and thinking of the time period and how there were penny dreadfuls and penny fiction a little earlier, but they were still out there, and this sort of sensational stories with ghosts and vampires, and all of those things were very popular. And so why not have a little tinge of that supernatural thing in there to add that sort of time period that we're writing about, that we're reading about. But there were also a lot of great books I used to help me get the information that I needed for this series. As you know, or may not know, but one of my protagonists, Tim Badger, is the one who was the former Baker Street Irregular, and he has a friend named Ben Watson, who was a black man in 1895 London. And for those who ask me why did I add a black man, I answer them because they were there. They were always there. They've been there since the Tudor times. But anyway, so this is one of the books. Very interesting. It's just a collection of Black Victorians. It says Black Victoriana. And it's a collection of essays about Black people in Victorian England. And the different jobs and where they came from and what they did and all that interesting stuff there. So I did that. There's also, this was very useful in the Enchanter Chronicles. It will become useful as the series goes on. This is about Victorian Railway. It's a pretty thin book, but it gets to the point quickly about the history of railroads in Victorian England. And they pretty much invented rail travel. They invented everything. And it took them a surprisingly long time to put bathrooms in the cars. You know what you had to do? You had to go. You went outside, kind of hung off the edge of the car. How fun was that? But one of the best things was this book, Victorian London Street Life. And it was written contemporaneously, of course. It's full of photographs of people, just everyday people doing stuff. And loads of this essay written by the guy who took the pictures, and he interviewed the people that he took the pictures of. And it's wonderfully insightful as to who was there on the streets, what you can expect to see and hear and smell while you're in Victorian London. And I love it. Oh, one other thing. I got this map. This has been completely invaluable to me. This is Sherlock Holmes' map of London. And what it is everything I need. It is actually from a real map. It's Reynolds' distance map of London from, I think, 1886, maybe later. But let me just show you. You could see any of this, I don't know. But it's very detailed as to where everything is, because I needed street names. It even gives me omnibus, the routes that the buses took, and where all the railroad tracks go and where all the stations are. It was completely wonderful. And incidentally, on the back, it tells you where the Holmes stories took place. So it's been wonderful to have that, and that with Google Earth gives me a rough estimate of what's going on where. So that's been wonderful. So just a taste of some of the books that I got to use when I was beginning my research. And of course, the Holmes canon. And the Holmes canon consists, by the way, of 4 novels and 56 short stories. And he wrote about Holmes from 1887 with A Study in Scarlet that was set in 1881. It was written in 1887 to 1927. 40 years of writing Holmes. No wonder he was tired of it. Of course, this was in between when he killed him and then brought him back. Spoiler. But anyway, there's a lot of great stories in there. I think I like The Red-Headed League is probably one of my favorites because it's just so silly. It's kind of a very comic story. The Blue Carbuncle, too, it's another one that I like. I don't believe there's any murders in either of those. That's another reason why I kind of like them. But I think the most diabolical story is not what you think, I would think. It's the adventure of Charles Augustus Milverton, the blackmailer, because he's so despicable. And comes a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear it, just at the end, one of the blackmailees, Holmes and Watson, have broken into the room, and they're watching while the blackmailee kills the blackmailer, which you wanted to see happen. And then they don't do anything about it. They just like, well, I guess we gotta get out of here. they just go. So yeah, that's some of the things that's one of the rules that Holmes lives by. If you deserve to die, then I just don't think I'm going to get in the way. I'm not going to solve that crime. It's like, I don't know. Guess I'll leave the country for a little while. So that's what I like about him. And by the way, think about your own favorite Holmes story. My Holmes is designed on Jeremy Brett. Now, when I was a young thing, my Holmes was Basil Rathbone. And maybe he is that for you today as well. Because I remember when I was a kid, every Sunday they showed all of the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movies. I mean, over and over again, because there weren't that many. But I liked it. It was before I ever read it. So he seemed right. He was very erudite. He always knew what he was doing. He has a very great accent. But as I grew older and I read the stories and then saw the Granada television series, Jeremy Brett seemed more realistic. Because compared to Basil Rathbone seemed a little stiff, a little wooden. It was his interpretation. It was probably an interpretation that was happening in plays and all that. And he just seemed too calm about everything. But Jeremy Brett has energy. He has the explosive dynamic of a real person who is single-minded in what he was investigating and thinking about, and he had to do something. He always had to do something, because when he didn't have a case, he was so bored, he injected cocaine just to get a rise. So Jeremy Brett is the embodiment of who I think of as Holmes. And so you'll probably see a little bit of that when you read the book, because he will show up. I don't know. What do you suppose the hardest thing about writing something like this is? And that's probably not what you think either. What I found the hardest thing, I discovered how many idioms I use. Dead as a doornail. That's an idiom. And, and many, many others. And so when I came across them, when I wrote it, when I'm writing, and I go, oh, idiom, I better look that up. First of all, did they use it? Is it too new? Or is it too old? You know what? Either way, you want it to be something they were using in the time period, and you wanted to make sure it wasn't American. It had to be British. And it seems like, well, we would have shared those idioms across the pond, but you have to remember that pond is a long way away. And now we did have telegraph communication was beginning, and but nobody was going to use American idioms unless they're being ironic or something. They wanted to prove that they read an American book, but or more likely newspaper. But so those were tough, and I had to make sure that those were all correct, and I still have to. You will notice that I don't phonetically spell out dialects. I don't like doing that. I think it's too hard for readers to read, and I think you can hear it in your head if it's written in a way that you know it is a dialect. So I don't drop any H's, in other words. You'll have to figure that out. Okay? So there you go. Let's talk about some stuff. Or should I do a giveaway? Should I do a giveaway now? We're 20 minutes in, so yes, I better do that. So what are we going to give away first? We're going to give away the mug. It's a very good mug. It's our ceramic mug. So if you want the mug, go to terrywesterson@gmail.com. If nothing else, it helps you learn how to spell my name. Jerr. Okay, so we're giving that away. The mug. Let us talk about. What do I do with that? Oh, there it is. Let us talk about our little presentation. We're going to do a little presentation. First, let me take a look at some of the things you guys have been saying. What have you been saying? Let's find out. If and I'll ask questions as we go through too. Don't be afraid. Don't wait till the end. Just when it comes to you, just write it on your little chat there. Loves the pipe. Always have the best giveaways. I try. I start as soon as I'm starting to write the next book. Because, they come from all over the place and you got to make sure you can afford them. So, at least that's my deal. Sherlockian fan wanting to read this book. Well, me too. I'm glad that Severn House had the foresight to take it when I pitched it. So that was nice of them. As some of you may know, I did this without my agent for reasons. Okay, such a Sherlock fan. I love Sherlock. I don't know what would be scary. She said that would be scary, Regina, but I don't know what. Love all of Sherlock Holmes stories and pastiches, and there are a lot of pastiches out there. Some are pretty strange, but some are very good too. Basil Rathbone, yeah. Jeremy Brett, he did nail it. Want to watch his Sherlock movies? Yep. Okay. All right, so I think we're caught up. The Woman in Green, yeah. How to the Baskervilles has always been your favorite, yeah. That's a good one. I think the series did a good job of it. I think the Jeremy Brett series, the Granada series, did a good job of that too. Made it kind of creepy. That's what you want. Okay, so we're going to talk about lots of things. Newest series is obviously a Sherlockian one. I think you know that by now. But it's not all about Holmes, but somewhat Sherlock adjacent. He's not the star of the show, but he is the in there, because you can't really have a Sherlockian pastiche without Sherlock showing up. But so let me see if I can get this going. See if I can find this for you. This is the book trailer, if you haven't seen it.
A former Baker Street Irregular, that is. As a Wall Street urchin in the slums of London, he used to work for Mr. Sherlock Holmes. And when he became a man, he began his own private detective agency with his friend, Ben Watson, a man of many talents. But Watson won't play second fiddle. And the truth of it is, Badger would be lost without him. When the game's afoot, they scour the city streets for clues to solve some of London's foulest crimes. From the townhouses of Mayfair to the slums of the East End. Unfortunately, their first fumbling attempts aroused the suspicions of a lovely female journalist intent on foiling their doings. Despite her insufferable interference, Badger and Watson carry on. But working in the shadow of the great man only gets them outflanked and just a step behind, until they find a case Holmes won't take.
Okay, well, that's if you want to see this this better than my shaky presentation, then what you want to do is go to my my channel, which you're on, and then you could watch it better there. My wonderful narrator, book narrator, Noah James Butler, doing the voiceover, and my husband who did the video. So that's kind of a fun thing. Now it's it's about see if you can see those guys. Yep, Tim Badger and Ben Watson. Badger is on this side. Watson is on this side. And it's Tim, that's the former Baker Street Irregular. And he brings his friend along to do this detective agency. He's no relation to Dr. Watson, by the way. That's just his name. Thought it would be fun to put his name in there and have that association to Sherlock Holmes, that Badger has his own Watson. So that was kind of a fun thing. So they're trying to work under the shadow of Mr. Holmes, and they really need clients and not doing a very good job of getting those clients. But anyway, here he is. This is, see if you can see that better. Better or worse? There we go. Illustrations of the Baker Street Irregulars through the various short stories that were published. And Dr. John H. Watson describes the original Baker Street Irregulars in A Study in Scarlet as, quote, half a dozen of the dirtiest and most ragged street Arabs that ever I clapped eyes on. To which Holmes remarked, there's more work to be got out of one of those little beggars than out of a dozen of the force. So he used them, and Tim was one of those guys as a little kid. So he's right. He did put those fellows to work. Led by their dirty little Lieutenant Wiggins, the street kids of all ages, usually under the age of 18, could go all over London, unnoticed, unseen, and listen in on the docks, in keyholes, on rooftops, and report back to Holmes. It was good work for a kid from the slums, 1 shilling a day per job, by the way, and likely the best they could ever do. So it was good for them. Good for them and their intellect. Amazingly, the Baker Street Irregulars have really caught the imagination of people. And they were only in 3 stories, mentioned in 3 stories. We have to assume they're in the background. They're just not mentioned. But they first appear in A Study in Scarlet. These are some illustrations from that. Study in Scarlet there. And from the others, The Sign of 4. I have my notes here because I can't remember nothing anymore. Sign of 4 is the middle one. You can see that, very dramatic. By the way, in different editions over the years, have varied between, the title has varied between, with most editions favoring the sign of 4, between the sign of 4 and the sign of the 4. So depending on what edition you have, but actually in the text, it's usually referred to as the sign of the 4. And if you know the story, you know why. So Holmes sets about to find steamship Aurora for a handsome reward. And in The Crooked Man, back. In The Crooked Man, the only way I could figure out how to do this guy right here, he sends out one irregular named Simpson to watch over Henry Wood's lodgings. So in just these 3 stories, that's where they come from, and he has us thinking about these poor street urchins who are suddenly glad to be appreciated for who they are and what they can achieve with their wits and their knowledge of the lowest places of London. So, that's it. It got my attention. So I thought, if I'm going to do a Sherlock Holmes pastiche, I don't want to focus on Holmes. I'm going to keep it to canon, though. I'm not going to add any nieces or nephews or orphans or anything, brothers, sisters, daughters, husbands, that relate to Holmes. I'm going to come at it from the Baker Street Irregulars, a kid that grows up and has the chutzpah to become a detective on his own. So it's called the Isolated Seance. Why is it called the Isolated Seance? Because there's a seance in it. And it was isolated. It's a locked room mystery kind of thing. And it basically, the seance starts the ball rolling. When businessman Horace Quinn wants to find out something that his dead business partner took to his grave. Now, here's I don't know if you can see this well enough here. Illustrate photos of people at a seance. And then there's somebody with a Ouija board at the bottom. We'll talk about that in a second. So seances, spiritualism, that movement started in the U.S. after the Civil War. People really desperate to talk to their relatives that they never saw. Once they left for battle, they never came back. So they were desperate to talk to them and to get in touch with them. And it traveled very quickly over the Atlantic to England, and it took hold there. So spiritualism, of course, Conan Doyle was interested in that as well. And he went to many seances, and he really thought they were real. And much later, his buddy, a friend of his, Houdini, became friends. All he wanted to do was debunk them, because he knew that they were nonsense, that they were not summoning the dead. People were taking advantage of people. And Ouija boards, it's funny about Ouija boards, they were invented in Maryland in about 1886 and started to manufacture them in 1890. At first, they were advertised as fun for the whole family. Just everybody have fun. And it was much later that it became this, people were scared of it being a demonic thing. But it's nonsense, really, because here's a Ouija board, the kind you can still get as a game. And as you can see, it has letters, it has numbers, it has no, yes, there it is, goodbye at the bottom here. And you had a planchette, that little triangular thing that's on the cover of the book. See that thing there? And either the medium would hold it or everybody at the table would touch it in some way. And even very well-meaning people who had their fingers on the planchette, who were thinking they were not doing anything, they would be compelled to move the planchette over different letters and spell out a message. Now, this is called the idiometer effect. You think you're not doing it. You're doing it unconsciously, moving that planchette. Of course, the medium is probably making you go to the different places, and everybody swears they're not, but making you spell out that message. But you can debunk this right away if everybody is blindfolded. And strangely enough, when everyone's blindfolded and they can't see the board and where the letters are, the messages come out gibberish. But the medium will tell you that it's, well, the spirits, they're not cooperating today. So don't fall for that stuff. So, as you can see from the book trailer, and getting back to the Irregulars, Baker Street Irregulars, there's a bit of the Artful Dodger about the Baker Street Irregulars, and it's not accidental. Though this is not Dickens' London anymore, it's still the Victorian period, which was from 1837 all the way to 1901 when she died. And Dickens was published from 1836 to 1870. Sherlock Holmes didn't appear on the scene until 1887. So that's, it's quite a time frame that's passed. So it's a different London in many respects, and a London that's also the same in many respects. And that comes down to how the poor were treated. And there was a lot of poverty there. With the creation of the 1834 Poor Law, and workhouses were born. Do you remember, when Scrooge says, "Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" The intention of the workhouse was good. The execution sucked. It was very flawed. It was a way for the government to care for the poor, to give them food and shelter out of the weather, but also to put them to work. Because in many ways, the morality of the day was to blame the poor for their lot. Is this ringing a bell today that they need to work because certain party people think that they should, even if they can't? Anyway, in order to give them a proper reset, they would work off their debts in the poorhouse. Even in Scrooge's day, the average man knew what a failure the workhouses were to help the poor and treat them humanely. Remember, because if they didn't find a place in a workhouse, they had few other options. But to spend the night, find a nice place to sleep. If you had a penny, you can do a 1 penny sit-up, and it's not, doing exercises. It's literally sitting up all night on a hard bench in a big hall with lots of other people. So if you can imagine, sitting up all night, I'm going to sleep. Or next to the other guy next to you. But if you had a tuppence, if you had 2 pennies, you could do a 2 penny hangover. Now that has nothing to do with what you drank the night before, but you can go to a place, a room that has ropes strewn across it, and you would literally hang over that. Now, I don't know if that's more comfortable than a hard bench. I don't think any of it's comfortable. But I guess you could cram a lot of people into a small room if they're hanging over a rope. And to make sure that you left, you didn't hang around too long. At 5 or 6 a.m., they'd cut the ropes. So, boom, out you go. And if you had 4 pennies and you still wanted to lay on the floor, well, the Salvation Army had a thing for you. These are 4 penny coffins. Yes, they're not coffins, though. They're just rectangular boxes without lids. And for 4 pence, you could lie in one of these with a little oilcloth over you to protect you, keep you warm. And in some places, for an extra penny, you can have a piece of bread and some tea in the morning. Fancy. Isn't that nice? They were caring for their poor. So, anyway, so Badger and Watson, and here they are. Try not to be so dark and dingy about the poverty, but it's there. It's always there. I mean, Tim was in the poorest of circumstances, and so he remembers it well. But he's just one of those optimistic people. He's a very much like Jack Ducker, only not as religious, and he's just got a sunny attitude that this will work. This will work. And Ben Watson, he had a family grocery store, and his father died, and he couldn't get it going, so he took on many different kinds of jobs and learned a lot of things. And so, he's a little more dour about things, but he gets it, and he really appreciates how Tim pulls it all together. But there's also a female protagonist. I don't see her face at all. And she is a female journalist. And yes, they did have them. Few of them, but they did have them. And she pretty much thinks that they're up to no good. Whatever they're doing is criminal, and so she follows them around and makes a nuisance of herself. But, and now I have a little quiz for you. Get your pencil and paper ready, because what do you know about the Sherlock Holmes stories? All of them. So you ready? Ready for the quiz? It's just a few questions. It's not that hard. Nobody wins anything at the end of it, so, take a nap. No, but you want to do this quiz because you want to learn some things, right? So, number 1. See if you can see this. Number 1. What was Doyle's original name for Sherlock Holmes? Was it A, Sorensen Holmes? Was it B, Sharonford Holmes? Or was it C, it was always going to be Sherlock Holmes? Okay, have you got that? Did you write it down? Are you writing it down? Good. We'll go on to the next one. Okay, number 2 in the quiz. What was Holmes's dog's name? Was it A, Toby? Was it B, Betsy? Or was it C, neither of the above? Got it? You didn't know you'd have to take the quiz today, did you? This is to sharpen your mind, get you ready for the mystery that you're going to read. So number 3. Holmes's older brother's name was A, was it Bycroft? B, Zoloft, a very relaxed brother? Or was it C, Mycroft? A lot of crofting going on there. Okay, we're on to number 4. Number 4, you ready? You ready? Holmes's older brother was a member of the A, the Diogenes Club, B, the Auto Club, or C, the National Geographic Society. You got that one? Okay. We have number 5. Okay, you ready? Who was Holmes's landlady? Was it A, Mrs. Tyne? Was it B, Mrs. Hudson? Or was it C, Mrs. Avon. Avon calling. Okay, you got that? Okay, there's one more. One more, number 6. Got that? Okay, number 6. Who were the only named Baker Street Irregulars? Was it A, Fenster and Lewis? Was it B, Cagney and Lacey? Was it C, Wiggins and Simpson? Got it? All right. That's it. That's it. Let's see how you did. All right. Answers to the quiz. Number 1, Holmes's name. Believe it or not, it was B, Sharonford. In the original notes of Doyle's rough draft of A Study in Scarlet, he toys with the name Sharonford Holmes. What do you think of that, Sharonford? It's a real name. So Sherlock. But you don't see anybody named Sherlock, do you? But Sherlock stuck. So number two, the dog's name. Number 2, what was Holmes's dog's name? And it's C. Holmes never owned a dog himself, but he did borrow one from time to time, and a dog named Toby, owned by a Mr. Sherman in the Sign of 4. The dog was a, quote, ugly, long-haired, lop-eared creature, half spaniel and half lurcher, brown and white in color, with a very clumsy, waddling gait. Wait a minute, isn't that me? No. And number 3, Holmes's brother, what's his name? Mycroft. He might have been a little Zolofty, but no, his name was Mycroft. And and in number 4, he belonged to a particular club that he liked, and that was A. He belonged to the Diogenes Club, which was sort of styled on the Athenian Club, which was a club in London for intellectuals. And Mycroft spent a lot of time there. He worked at Whitehall, and he lived across the street from the Diogenes Club. So he got off of work, went to the Diogenes Club, and maybe, slithered home across the street to sleep. So he really loved his club. Number 5, the landlady. Though she didn't have a name in A Study in Scarlet, it was B, Mrs. Hudson. Extra points for recognizing that all the names in number 5 are also river names, if you got that. And number 6, the irregulars' names were C, Wiggins and Simpson. We don't know their first names. So that's kind of a bummer. But that's how that went. I think it's time to give something else away because we are moving on apace here. So, the duck, the Sherlock duck. He will investigate all of your bathtub activities, I guess. And you can go to right now, jerrywesterson@gmail.com. It'll get you there. Okay? The duck. The duck. And if I have a voice, I'll do a little reading right now. Yeah, then we'll let's get myself fortified. Just so you have an idea of what's going on. So I'm going to read it without my glasses. Because that's how I do. There we go. Tim squinted through the bars of his communal cell. He touched the tender spot on his mouth where, last night, the constable tried hard to remind Badger with his fist that Tim was the lawbreaker and not the great detective he thought himself to be. Leaning against the cold iron bars, he wondered how long it would take Watson to discover where he'd got to. Of course, he must have seen his capture and rabbited out of there. He hoped. What did it matter? Watson had no way to get Tim out. Who knew how long he'd be in the nick this time? Pipe smoke. Among all the smells in the cell, from the chamber pot to the drunkard lying in a pool of his own sick, he didn't expect to smell that particular brand of tobacco here. He straightened. Ever before that voice spoke in its low, cultured tones, he knew immediately who it had to be. Well, Badger, not the most propitious beginning to a career. He whirled about, and there was the great man himself on the other side of the bars. Mr. Holmes! Sherlock Holmes puffed on his briar pipe, his sharp nose looming over it like a gargoyle perched on the roof of a cathedral. His eyes were hooded when he slid his gaze toward Tim. Tim sighed in relief, but at the same time, the heat of mortification washed over him. The last thing he had wanted was his old gov to discover him in jail. It's not my fault, sir, he said quickly. Holmes chuckled. It escaped his lips as curls of smoke. Never fear. I had no doubt of that. I'm certain your enthusiasm manifested itself into incautious behavior. It did at that, Mr. Holmes, no mistaking. Which is why I have talked it over with Inspector Stanley Hopkins to have you released. No charges. Here is the gatekeeper now. Over Holmes' shoulder, Tim heard the clinking of keys. The big-bellied copper came up to the door, eyed Holmes with an inquiring brow, and fitted a key in the lock. The other bleary-eyed prisoners rose with hopeful expressions. Badger only, said the sergeant, threatening with his truncheon toward the others. They moved back against the wall of the cell. Tim gratefully slipped through the slim opening before the man could change his mind. The policeman nodded toward Holmes. He's in your custody now, Mr. Holmes. Spinning on his heel, he let the ring of keys fall to his considerable waist as he stomped away. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Hadn't we better leave this place? It is less than conducive to a complete recitation of the facts. Lead on, sir. Tim noticed he was of a similar height to Holmes these days, and had that same lean figure, and so following closely on the man's swift strides was not as challenging as it had been when he was a youngster. But when they left the precincts of the police station, there was that confounded woman again. Mr. Badger, she cried. She lifted her gloved hand with its pencil. In her other hand was a notebook. How had she found out about his capture? She pushed forward, nudging Holmes aside. Tim was worried the gov would be affronted at her rude behavior, but Holmes's expression was nothing but amused. Pardon me, she muttered, but with scant glance at Holmes and with no apology in her voice. You were arrested for housebreaking, Mr. Badger, she said, with a feral smile. What have you to say to the readers of the Daily Chronicle for that, and how it relates to your supposed business as a private detective? Holmes snorted and stepped out of the way, pretending to fiddle with his pipe. Supposed? Tim didn't like the way she said private detective with a sneer. He slapped on an injured expression, as he'd seen on Holmes many a time. My good woman, you're making assumptions without the facts. Then care to share the facts, Mr. Badger? Wait, I'll help you. With index finger, she rifled through her notebook and consulted it. Last night you were caught housebreaking into the Quinn residence at 49 Gower Street, Bloomsbury, where it is known by this reporter that you contracted work from the felon Thomas Brent, who was sought by police for the crime of murdering his employer, Mr. Horace Quinn, resident of the very same house. As a point of correction, Miss Littleton, Thomas Brent is not a felon. He is only wanted by the police for questioning about certain details. He ain't, he cleared his throat, he isn't to be arrested. I'm sure the Daily Chronicle readers would like the most accurate reporting, not the more sensationalized version of events. She flashed a smile, and Tim thought it was most becoming on her pert face, surrounded as it was by a cloud of auburn curls. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Badger. They greatly enjoy sensation. But as a female reporter out to do her best job, I personally seek the truth. And the truth of it is, Mr. Badger, is that you are a criminal, fobbing yourself off to the public as a... She laughed, jostling the bright curls, propping up her smart, jaunty hat with its feathers. Tim suddenly didn't think that smile was all that pretty anymore. As a private detective, she went on merrily, comparing yourself to the great Sherlock Holmes. How absurd! Holmes leaned in. I beg your pardon. Just one moment, she said rudely, shouldering him back without a glance. She flapped her notebook in Tim's face. I have enough on you to send you to Fleet, my man. I've had my eye on you for some long while, Mr. Badger. He postured. This was wasting his time. Miss Littleton, you've got it wrong, as usual, and I will prove it to you at some point in the future. But in the meantime, I've got work to do. More housebreaking? He frowned. His instinct was to tell her where to shove her lies, but with Mr. Holmes standing there smirking, he merely raised a brow. No. If you don't mind, I need to consult with Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Oh, of course you do, she crowed. I'm sure he'll give you the time of day. Holmes finally pushed his way past the reporter, seeming to make certain to knock into her shoulder. He raised his hat. Pardon me, you must be Miss Elsie Myra Littleton of the Daily Chronicle. Charmed to make your acquaintance. And who is this, Mr. Badger? Yet another accomplice in your crimes? Holmes chuckled. Oh, indeed, Miss Littleton, an accomplice, surely. My name is Sherlock Holmes. He snickered again, touched the brim of his hat, and scuttled around her, taking Tim tightly by the crook of his arm and steering him away. So that's how we see Mr. Holmes sometimes as the book goes on. So do we have any questions? Let's see if anybody has anything that they want to know, some burning question. The Ouija boards were advertised at one time as a children's game. Yeah, a whole family game for up until even the early 20th century, when was it Parker Brothers? One of those companies managed to buy it or trademark it or something, and they advertised it early 20th century as a game for everyone in the family. How fun is that? But like I said, it's not real, people. Okay, it's not real. Two-penny hangover. Yeah, that's a lot of fun, isn't it? We've never treated the poor very well. It's a joke, or it's a make them work, even though they can't work. They're disabled. They can't do it. They're too old, or whatever. It's a crime in this country that they're making people. They can't retire until they're 70. Now they want you can get the full benefits when you're 70. How would you like a guy that did asphalt most of his adult life, with streets, hot asphalt in the summer, or a roofer has to wait till he's 70? None of that's right. It's not right. And we can't seem to figure it out. Some places do, but not a lot of them. Oh, yeah. Oh, Avis, good for you. She got it all right except for Toby. That was a trick question because we just kind of always assumed that Toby somebody was just taking care of him for Holmes, but he really belonged to somebody else. So, got all the rest. Great accents. Thank you. Yes, I love listening to your readings. Oh, yeah. 6 out of 6, Gene. Very good job. I'm gonna send you one of them our pens. Just for that, Gene. You got them all. Anybody else get them all? Just let me know. So, so writing this series, the beginning, I've already finished the second book in the series, and that's got to go through several of my rewrites and then eventually go to my publisher. But it was fun getting into the hang of it. And there's a lot of humor in it because these two guys, I don't know if you could see well, you probably saw it on most of my postcards, wherever those are. Here they are. I have a little image there of Badger and Watson. And, they're clueless without Holmes. So that's sort of the joke, that they're kind of stumbling around until Mr. Holmes steps in and kind of helps them out. It was the beginning of that. Writing the stories, if you read the Holmes stories, there's a lot of people just telling Sherlock what's happening. So there's not a lot of action in a lot of the stories. It's just this recitation of why they're here to see him and get him to help them. And so that was my homage to that at the beginning of the book, because the client has come to see them and he's sort of explaining what happened. So, but not going page after page with it too. And you might have also noticed that the Conan Doyle stories are not play fair mysteries. And what we mean by playing fair mysteries is that the clues are all there. The reader can see them, possibly, hopefully, breeze over them. And, if you were paying attention, close attention all the time, you could probably figure it out. But in the Holmes stories, there's almost no way to figure it out, because he does it with the method, with his deductive technique. And if you really tried to do that, you would mostly be wrong. Because, there's a scratch on your watch or this, and how would you ever know how they got that? How would you ever know what brand of match that is once it's burnt? Without scientific forensic study of and doing the science of that and figuring it out, that they didn't have that. So a lot of the deductive reasoning that Holmes does it's theatrics. But we love that, don't we? So there's a little bit of that in the books. They try it. They're not always successful, but then Holmes does tell them, I've been bosom companions with Dr. Watson for 14 years, and he still can't do it. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad, Tim or Ben. You can't do it because nobody really can. So that's a fun thing. But I mean, in real life, in real police work, it's usually the most obvious. It's Occam's razor. It's usually the most obvious person that did it. It's the husband, it's the wife, it's somebody close relative, it's the business partner, it's whatever. And that's how most crimes are solved. They're not solved by, figuring out the ash of the cigar left behind. So, but mysteries would be boring if that's the way it came out. So nobody writes them that way. So we leave that to the actual police. So anything else? Yeah, in book 2. Oh yeah, we're getting more than one. My contract was for 2, and there shall be more, I hope, because it looks like some good stuff going on with that ahead of time. Yes, it's fun for me because now I'm finally writing a sort of more traditional, kind of cozy-ish story. And now I'm getting play from a lot of blogs and bloggers and other people and reviewers who didn't want to touch a medieval noir, but they'll sure touch a Sherlockian pastiche. So they were happy to do that, and I'm happy to be in their group for that. So hopefully I will be going to Malice Domestic next year, which is in Maryland, and home of the Ouija board, by the way. It's a mystery fan convention there, and but it's mostly for like cozies and traditionals. And I went once or twice, but I didn't feel like it was for me and that I was for them. But now I can, so I will. All right, it's probably time to give away something else. So we are going to give away the book bag. Look how nice this is. It's very well made. And you can use this for books and for groceries and things like that. So if you want the book bag, go to cherrywesterson@gmail.com. And then you can win that. And while we're at it, let's just go ahead and we've got 2 more umbrella pens to give away. So go and say that you want that too. It's a separate email. Or put them all together. At this location. Okay. cherrywesterson@gmail.com. All right. So I hope, if you pre-order from Amazon, it's supposed to release on June 6th. People have already gotten them. So there you go. I hope you're reading it, enjoying it. And if you enjoy it, please leave a review. If you didn't enjoy it, don't leave a review. That's only common sense, right? All right. So we're getting near the end. Are there any questions? I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of questions here because you're so used to me, you know all the answers. Okay. Nobody. Looks like all the same stuff. What else? I do like finding things out about the period, Victorian period. I just found out something really cool the other day that I won't have to use in the books as just a throwaway. And I saw it on the Antiques Roadshow. So who says TV is bad for you? So it was this wonderful, and I've seen pictures now of lots of them. And it's just a bunch of layers of felt with, pin shears, snippet. That's called. The little zigzag snippers all around. So it's layered. And then on top is like, it could be like a little metal dog head or butterfly or deer or something, because it looks decorative. It's on your desk. But what it's for your pen. It's called a pen wipe, and you unfold the layers of felt, and you go to the black one, and when you're dipping, not this pen, but when you dip your pen in ink, sometimes it's a little drippy, and you try to scrape it off on the inkwell, but by just dabbing it a little in the pen wipe, you're not going to drip all over your letter. Isn't that great? Something that has gone to the ages because nobody needs it anymore. A pen wipe or a pen wiper. And they had it on both sides of the pond, so I'm excited to use that. How do mystery writers find their puzzles? We don't find them, we make them up. In this story, for instance, like I said, it's a locked room mystery. All the people were locked in the room with this seance going on, and the lights went out, and Horace Quinn, the owner of the house, the master of the house, with all the servants around him doing the seance, he gets killed in front of everybody, and nobody saw a thing because it was the dark. The light went out, and nobody knows who did it because they all had a motive. And they all could have done it. So that's and then that's just me figuring out all the details because I'm telling you, if you ever meet me on a cruise ship and somebody gets murdered, do not look to me to investigate it because I won't know how. It's all when you invent it all, when you write yourself into a corner, essentially, you get to make it all up, and then you get to go back and add clues, and sometimes you switch who you originally had doing it to somebody else, because then all the clues are aiming towards them, and then it's somebody else completely. So it's just a matter of reading a lot of mysteries and then thinking about it. How would you investigate it? How would you, create all the details? Yeah, it's the details that I have a problem with. Well, like I said, if you want to write one, you need to read a lot of them, your favorite kind, and then literally take the book apart. What is the rise in action at the end of every chapter? What is the next chapter leading you toward? The people who are talking about everything, what is it they're actually saying, and what are, where are they leading you? You're getting led throughout the book. There's things happening around it. I always have lots of character. My characters have lots of story, and they're distracted by other things in their lives. So it's all interrupted by the mystery that keeps happening. So it's all of those things put together. I say now that a historical mystery is writing two books at the same time. You're writing an historical novel that gets interrupted by a mystery, but they all have to mesh together into one historical mystery novel, so it all makes sense. What it takes, Lupita, is rewriting. Writing is essentially rewriting, because nobody writes it and says, well, that's it, I'm done, it's perfect. No, there's a lot of rewriting that has to go on. Usually it's because of structure. Sometimes I move whole chapters in a different place to make it all make better sense, because that doesn't belong there, that should be later, or this should be earlier, or whatever. So it's just a matter of lots of writing. The Kindle book or pre-order, will there be an audible version of the book? Well, isn't that the question? Now, the publisher has the audio rights. And so far, they've never invoked them. But they keep telling me now that Canongate owns them. Severn House is now a subsidiary of Canongate. That they will do the option. But if they don't do it a year after it was published, then that right reverts to me. So I hope that I can be in more control of that and have and get a audiobook publisher to sign me up. And then I hope to get Noah James Butler to do the narration, because I love him and all of his characterizations. He would be great for this. What was your favorite fact to find while researching these books? Oh, this time there was a lot of different things. There was a lot about railroads and restaurants were just becoming something. They're called refreshment rooms, but in a hotel they were called restaurants. And so, you have to get used to, there wasn't something called cafes quite yet. It was just almost getting there. So that sort of thing was it's like knowing if you're writing historicals that are set 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, you have to know it's something everybody remembers, but we don't remember exactly when the different phone booths became something. First, there were wooden things inside hotels and inside train stations and bus stations. Not necessarily on the street, but then in England, they did have the red phone booths on the street. But in America, When did we go to aluminum? When did we go to the half ones? And then when did we just get rid of them completely? So, little things like that make a big difference. So now finally we have the last one to give away because we're going 15 minutes over. The hat und the pipe. If you want the hat und the pipe, you don't want them in German? I don't know. Go to that email address, jerrywesterson.com. And jerrywesterson@gmail.com. Don't make a mistake. jerrywesterson@gmail.com. The other way will get you nowhere but my website. So there we are. We've talked. We've read. I've cleared my throat a whole lot. You've asked some questions. If I've lost any in the meantime here. That's so far. That's it. You guys are getting too. You guys know me too well. It's the problem. You can't ask these questions anymore. Okay. So unless there are any more questions, I think we're going to wrap this up. So all of you guys can be free to do whatever you do at this time of the day on a Sunday. And I want to thank you for coming. Looks like it says we have 16 people. So that's pretty good. That's sometimes better than my in-person launches. But there are more in-person launches. And let me tell you about them before you go away. And you can always win more stuff if you go to the launches. If you are in California, in Southern California, or Northern California, going to be up there June 4th. That was today. That was our YouTube launch. And if you missed the first part of it, when it's over, you can watch it all over again because it's recorded and you can watch it. You can't win anything, but you can watch it. And on June 17th, I'll be at Book Carnival Bookstore in Orange, California. And on June 24th, I'm very excited about this one. I'll be in Northern California at Baker Street West, the second floor of Hine & Company Bookshop in Jackson, California, up there in Gold Country. It's I'm very excited about to do that. Looks like the cutest little town. They do a whole Sherlockian shop up in the second floor. They have like 3 or 4 stores. They have the whole building. So they have Sherlockian shops, Victorian little shops upstairs. They do theatrical entertainments, Victorian Sherlock. So it's going to be fun. I can't wait. July 7th, I'll be at Vroman's Bookstore in Pasadena, if that's your favorite location. I think some of you will probably be there. Or on July 8th, I'll be at Gatsby Books in Long Beach. So that's a fun little tour. There you go, into July. So thank you for coming, everybody. And we'll see who wins the gifts. And thank you all for coming and participating. Review of the book. We love it. It's a lot of fun to write. And hopefully I'll be writing lots more of them. So what a fun thing. Thank you all. And have a good rest of your day. Ta-ta.